All right, for this one, I think we touched it slightly last year as well, and I'm supported by a lot of EASA experts in the back. Most of all, Laurent Fleury, our senior expert, Vincenzo Brandi. I think, Vincenzo, you presented last year, and Torvald Buck, you are also involved in many of the projects and have a lot of discussions on this topic. Again, just transporting a key message here and not necessarily going into all the nitty-gritty details. So what is the subject about? EASA has an interpretive material certification review item on oxygen fire hazard that is applied to oxygen installations in general. Reason for it being that we had a number of, I think, less than 5 prominent oxygen fire events, and shortfalls were found in the oxygen systems that are currently in operation. And since oxygen fire is a potentially catastrophic event, we are in quite an uncomfortable situation. And that goes into the common issues that we have. First of all, the certification review item is interpretive material and not special condition. That has implications in terms of how visible it is, how applicable it is, how well can we identify the issue. Then usually for an oxygen system, design organizations depend on suppliers. I think none of the design organizations that I recognize here has particular day-to-day activities on oxygen systems and components. The first question always comes up, can we use service experience? I will go into that question in the next slide. And then we have a perceived unequal treatment because that topic came up because of events and not since ages. So there are definitely some projects which do not contain compliance to this oxygen fire hazard requirement in their design, and some others, typically all of them, which are applied today, and even some for which previously an approval has been granted and changes are made, also those are affected. So what are our considerations? On the aspect of discovering the CRE in context of a project, we will segregate the certification review item from the large aeroplanes, air medical services special condition, because that was just a vehicle for us to transport this material. An interpretive material CRE would normally not be published on the EASA webpage on its own. Meanwhile, the requirement has been transposed into CS25 Amendment 21. It was already earlier in the FAA EASA General Validation Item list, and it's now in the EASA Safety Emphasis Item list. So we do our best to make this material visible in a better way. I also would say, in the end, probably the best material would be a certification memorandum, but since this takes longer than what we were so far able to do, we have not done that yet, but it's in the pipeline. The lack of supplier data, use of service experience. Well, that refers back to the uncomfortable situation in which we are. We know that there are events, but cynically there are not enough events to come up with a airworthiness directive across the entire oxygen installations on the entire world fleet. So that's where we have most of the discussions. I think in light of a potential catastrophic failure condition, none of the products that we have on the market can prove by virtue of service experience that they never had an event in 1 × 10⁻⁹ probability values. We are, however, looking into some mitigation, some alleviation. We obviously started, and I'm a member of the Large Aeroplane Department, Large Aeroplane Certification Directorate. We started with large aeroplanes, but the certification review item is equally applicable to general aviation, small and large rotorcraft. So we are looking currently into the risk per product, part 23, 27, 29. However, I have to insist, another key message, no changes envisioned for large transport aircraft for part 25. However, what we do, even for part 25, we look into commonalities with other modes of transport. I've currently established a contact with one representative of a Ministry of Transport to see whether we can take some of the experience that we gain on the surface with ambulance cars and probably transpose that or use that for our aviation purposes. And then the perceived unequal treatment. Well, first of all, that's inevitable that some design approvals have a heritage, have been approved a couple years back. Those ones, whenever they are touched, when they are touched in terms of oxygen installation, they will be subjected to oxygen fire hazard decree, but inevitably some still don't have this material in their cert basis. However, we have now recently agreed to standardize text for provisions only. That's sometimes even an EASA recognized necessary way to get around some of the implications. A perfectly EASA certified oxygen system may not be acceptable in other areas of the world, like in China, for example. That's a recent example. Even not so recent. That's an example that we have learned that in China the standards, the oxygen bottle standards that we use in Europe are not recognized, and therefore there is no added value in fully certifying the system per EASA standards if another system is installed once it's with the operator. All right, now it's time for questions.
So we have one question first about the presentation with non-approved, non-EASA approved configuration. Is it possible to have an EASA approval for a change, be it minor or major, on a product which has no EASA type certification?
That's a very good question, and that's definitely one of the limitations where we cannot help, simply because a supplemental type certificate, as the name suggests, or also a major design change, needs to be based on a type certificate, and if a product does not have an EASA type certificate, we also cannot issue a supplemental type certificate.
Okay, so no TC, no activity approved by EASA.
Unfortunately, yeah. Well, unfortunately, well, it's pretty common sense.
Yes. There was another question, and I think the STC workshop wouldn't be a STC workshop if it was not raised for each workshop. Each time I participated, this question was raised. So you mentioned the CRE in your second presentation, and some people were surprised or were not expecting it. And so the question was raised, how does EASA intend to communicate about the existing CREs, the applicable CREs, those which are making a minor change as of a sudden being a major one? So are there any news about it? Because as I said, we have answered this question each year, but each year a little bit differently.
Well, then let's add another answer. My personal expectation is that with the CEPIAC platform, where ultimately design organizations, external, internal experts and foreign authorities are supposed to have access, that would be my personal preference, to have all the certification review items, or at least a list of all certification review items posted there. Extending that, already today we have our EASA consultation page. Just yesterday I was following the track with another expert colleague. It's under library, product certification, consultations, and then you have to click on consultations, and then you get to a search mask. So all the special conditions, equivalent safety findings, deviations that we issued since existence of EASA should be on this web page. So
thank you. We indeed have no magic solution for the crease right now, but as soon as we get one, you will be informed, of course. We do our best, and as I mentioned before, please check our website. This is the best we can offer for the moment. Hopefully with SEPIAC we will be able to do something better, but for the moment it is still, let's say, the beginnings of it.